Well, hello there. We're not really ready to start the rewiring process, the actual physical rewiring process of this chassis, not quite yet. And there's two reasons. One, the parts haven't yet come in from Just Radios. It's only been a few days. It'll be a couple more days, probably next Monday or Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, I don't know, whenever they get here, okay? And there's also some fundamentals I need to cover for the newbies. You know, our newbie friends, or those of you who have been in, restoring radios, and all you've ever done is replace resistors and capacitors and been fortunate enough to have the thing work and everything's happy and, oh wow, look what I did. I've been there, trust me on that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give you some basic fundamentals. I'm going to give you some basic advice. You do with it what you wish, okay? Number one, if you're a newbie, do not buy a chassis that's been completely gutted. I mean, not a single wire in there at all. Not a good idea, because with it, they usually take some really important components. For instance, this thing right here. I have no idea what's in this box. I got to find out. Only one end of it's connected. I don't know what that is. I'm going to find out, though. Maybe a coil of some kind. I don't know. And this thing here, they would probably eliminate that. Everything was in there. And there'd be a lot of things that you would probably need that would not be there. Not a good idea to buy a completely gutted chassis. We had a couple of our good subscribers, said, well, why don't you just strip it all down and start from scratch? No, that's really not a good idea. And because you shouldn't buy one that's totally stripped down. Only your experienced guys that have been around a while and have done this before. Had I never done this before, I would not be doing this video right now. I've done this 2 or 3 times already, just completely rewired, maybe more than 2 or 3. I don't even remember, it's been so many. But you have to go back to the basic fundamentals. For instance, one of the very basic fundamentals is after you get your paperwork together, which is number 1, you go ahead and get your schematic all set up like I did right here. I made it big. You don't have to make it that big if you don't want. I recommend that you do, especially if you're going to do a rewiring job. It just makes more, it just comes together better if you got something bigger to look at. I don't know. And first thing to do is you go to each tube, identify the tube. In this case, we have a 35. Let me get some clarity here. There we go. We got a 35, a 35, a 35, a 24, a 47, and a 27. Now identify the pins on the tubes and write them on the schematic. That's something I always tell you to do, and other radio restorers have told you to do that also. Write down your pin numbers and put them in pencil in case you make a mistake. You can erase it. Don't blob everything up with ink if you can help it. Mark all your pin numbers and get them on the schematic. You say, well, where am I supposed to do that? How do I do that? Where do I get those pin numbers at? It's easy, okay? If you have a tube manual, such as an RCA, this is one of the very first things I bought when I first started repairing radios. It was recommended to me by members of the Antique Radio Forum, in particular, Kurt Reed. Kurt Reed. He's now deceased. But he told me, John, get yourself a series RC14 receiving tube manual from RCA. It will come in handy someday. He was, I can't tell you how right he is. I've used this thing so many times. And you find the tube number in the manual. In this case, we'll look at we'll look at the 27 right here. It's got a cathode, a heater, a control grid, and a plate. So we come here and we look up the 27 tube, get this paper out of here. There we go. And there it is right there. We zoom in here. Boy, this is hard doing this with just one hand because you're moving around so much. Let me get it down here. There it is right there. There's the 27 tube. And there it is. The heaters are pin 1 and 5. The cathode is 4. The plate is number 2. And the control grid is 3. Now, how can it get any easier? The alternative is you can go to the internet and look up electron tube data sheets. Go to Frank's, let me see, what's the name of his internet address? It would be frank.pocnet.net, or just type in Frank's electron tubes. Okay, that's all you got to do. And the first page will look like this. And it'll say, what's the first number of your tube? Well, we want 2. I've already gone through it, so I know how to do this. We're looking up to 27, so we click 2. That takes us to the next set of numbers and everything. You don't worry about this top number. Right here in the center, the 7 would fall right there after 23F because it picks up over here with 2C5. So the 20, we already got the 2, the 7 would be right there. So we'll click on that. And then we'll come on down here. Come on down along the left side. It would keep on going till we get to the 27 tube. Where are you, booger? Come on, come on. You're there somewhere. Oh, there's a lot of tubes here. I hope you're seeing all this. And then we come over here and we'll click on Sylvania. Let me see, where's our 2? I want to get these in the cameras so I know where I'm at. Okay, here we go. Come across. You got RCA, Sylvania. Normally you have 2 or 3 choices. Come over here. I'm going to go with the Sylvania, which is this one right here, okay? Click on it, and voila. There's another drawing of the 27 tube. Let's go ahead and make it big. Let's take it up to that size right there. We'll scroll it down there. And there you go. The heater is 1 and 5. We can even go bigger yet. Let's go a little bigger yet. Alright, there we go. Now we got the heater is 1 and 5. The plate is 2. The grid is 3. And the cathode is 4. It can't get any easier. We have the internet nowadays, folks. Our ancestors didn't have that luxury. Now the next thing I labeled was the antenna coil. I labeled the IF coil. I labeled the T1. I've labeled these indiscriminately, T1, 2, and 3, but this is your first detector. And this is your second detector. And it involves the 35 tube, you can see it right there, 35 tube. And I'm not going to use the 24 for now. I'm going to go down and use the 27, which is the oscillator tube. Now why am I doing that? Why am I going 35, 35, 35? Why don't I just go over and do 24? Why am I going down here to 27? Well, I'm going to show you why. On the drawing that came with the rider's schematic that I got off Nostalgia Air, there are 4 tubes along one side of this chassis. A 35, a 35, a 35, and a 27, okay, which is the oscillator tube. 3 35s and a 27. That's why I didn't use the 24. So where are those tubes? Well, lo and behold, let me back up and I'll show them to you. There's a 35 right there, a 35 right there, a 35 right there, and a 27 right there. These are the 3 35s and the 27. If we take our drawing from the Nostalgia Air paperwork I got, and I lay it on the chassis in the exact same configuration that the chassis is laid out on, which would be my 4 tubes to the right, which I have the 4 tubes to the right, and the power transformer would be down here on the left at the bottom, and that's exactly where it was. So we're set up exactly like it is in the picture. And according to the picture, this first one, now we're reading upside down, so let's take a quick look at it. This first one, clear it up, says RF. Right here, it's the RF tube, and it goes over to an antenna coil. I marked it antenna coil. This is the grid cap coming out of the 35 tube, going over into that coil. So let's see if we have, let me see, if we look at it, of course, now is, before we get ahead of ourselves here, I don't want to do that. We take a look at this. According to that, it would be this first coil, and this first tube. So let's stand it up. Remember, that would be the one at the top. Yes, it would. It would be the one at the very top up there, right in the corner. So let me get a little bit more light and get close in there and see if that grid cap does go into that coil. Well, it's been a couple of days since the last segment, and I have to sit here and kind of try to remember what we left off on. I think we're getting ready to determine whether or not this first coil right here, right there, that first coil, and this 35 tube right here, were connected to one another, and if so, that would be the antenna coil. which would be this coil right here that I've marked antenna. So what we need to do to find out, because I need to mark each of these coils on the bottom. Now I put a temporary mark there in A because I think that's the antenna coil. Just by kind of eyeballing it, I stuck me a little A there for antenna. So, you know, it's easier to find on the bottom of the chassis when you kind of do pencil marks here and there. Some people don't like that, but I don't care. You know, I like it. It helps me troubleshoot faster and easier without making a lot of mistakes. Because, you know, I don't always remember what's in these radios after a period of time. If they start messing up, it's like, geez, what was this and what was that? I don't have to go back and do it all over again. It's all I go, oh yeah, that's the antenna coil, that's this, that's this, that's this, you know. You can do it any way you want. Okay, so what I need to do is take a continuity check between the grid cap on this 35 tube, the one in the corner, and see if I have continuity here where the wire goes out to the tuning capacitor through the top of the chassis. And I should also have continuity down here to one side of this capacitor right here, which goes through to ground. You know, I won't have any continuity down through here because the plates are not touching on either of these capacitors, okay? It's got to go down through the coil down here to one side of that capacitor. So let's see what we get with that. I've got the negative lead connected to that coil grid cap just coming out of the center. We've got to be real careful. You don't want to be breaking off these grid cap wires on these things, okay? Be very careful. They're just covered with wax. It's the way that I put some liquid tape on to make it a little bit stronger here because it was a little bit flimsy. I've got that negative lead connected there. Now what I need to do is see, I should get, according to the schematic again, I should have continuity to where that wire, get a little focus here, to where that wire goes out through the chassis to the top of the chassis to where the tuner is. This is your tuner with the dotted lines, okay? Alright, let me see. Here is the wire going out through the top of the chassis right there. That is the tuner wire coming off of that top coil. I should have some kind of continuity there when I touch it with my multimeter. And I do. There is continuity there. That's great. Okay. That already tells me this is the coil. Okay. And what the heck. Let's go ahead and go down here and touch the other side of the now this capacitor, keep in mind, goes across the ground. We'll just touch this side of it and see if we get some continuity. Let me see. There's the side. This is the grounded side over here. Let's touch it right here and see what happens. And there we have it. Here, there it is. Okay. Now what I can do is take this marking pen and put the A there where I can see it a whole lot better. It's a black Sharpie. What I'm going to do with my old eyes, you know, my eyes aren't getting any better as the years go by. So I can take away that, since that is no longer required, I can go ahead and mark it with the Sharpie. And now we know that that's the antenna coil. It wasn't that easy. Yes, it was. Once we get the rest of these things identified, what coil goes to what tube, and to make sure that what I've labeled up here is correct, and it will match up with this over here, then we can start changing wires in this section, okay? The next three tubes we have to deal with, we've already taken care of the antenna here. The next three tubes, a 35, a 35, and a 27. Now we turn this thing around because this is the way they are. They're actually upside down as we're looking at them. This is their first 35, then another one, and another one, and then a 27. Well, it says here the 27 is the oscillator tube. It's where our oscillator is right here. And it says also on the paperwork, you look at the 27 down here, it also says oscillator, OSC. Remember, this is upside down. Well, that's easy. All we have to do is make sure that the oscillator, whatever coil the oscillator is going into, or the 27, whatever the coil the wire is going into, automatically makes it the oscillator coil, okay? So let's find out which one it is. Man, we don't even have to use the multimeter on this one. Look at here, we've got this wire. This is your 27 tube. Here's a wire. Pick any wire, it doesn't matter. And look where it goes. goes down into that coil right there. Let me get this thing out of the way. Goes right down into that coil. So that coil on the bottom right there corresponds directly to the oscillator tube. So all I have to do is put a big O in the middle of that one, okay? By now you're probably saying, I don't understand why he's going through all this. You know, obviously the coils that are straight across from the tubes are the ones that, you know, that go to the tubes. And of course my question is, do they? We only have 2 tubes left, these 235s, and we have to make sure that you're connected to the right coil. This one to here, and this one to here. This being the IF, this one being the first detector tube, okay? So which is which here? These are the 2 tubes. Which is which? Well, fortunately for us, there is a switch right here. It's called a quiet and power switch. It's connected to the coil that goes into the IF. I mean, you can't get any easier. That again, I don't even have to use the multimeter. All I got to do is find that switch, find out which coil it's going into, and then where it comes out, right into the 35. This whole thing will be one little piece here. So, you know, that quiet and power switch apparently it tones the radio down a little bit because it leads on down into the right here. It's getting some power from the field coil. It looks comes up when you throw that switch in. You're throwing in this capacitor. I don't know. Maybe it sort of dulls it down or changes the tone somehow. I don't really know what that's all about. I'm sure some smart guy out there that's dealt with these 1930 radios will know. Well, let's find this switch. This is it right here. Okay, it's just a little old toggle switch. Looks like it's original too. It's not even a replacement. Just a little. This sticks through the side of the cabinet, by the way. The wood sticks out the side, where you can just kind of reach over there and flip that switch. Let's find out which coil it goes to. Let me see here. Let's zoom in on it. Here's your toggle switch. One side of it goes into a coil and goes up. It goes up through the chassis into a coil right there. That coil right there. That coil would be the second coil from the bottom. Alright, let's take a look at the second coil from the bottom. Well, according to our drawing, the second coil from the bottom, again, I've got it laid out just like you see it right here. We got our 4 tubes, just like there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me back up here just a little bit. According to this, the second coil from the bottom is the IF. So, is that switch wire connected to the second one from the bottom? Let me go ahead and wiggle it. So all we got to do is wiggle this baby. We don't even have to ohm it out. Man, oh man. Let me wiggle that wire and see if it moves that coil at all. Come on, baby. Where you at here? Yes, it is moving it. It is moving it ever so slightly. I can see it moving it. All right. What does that mean? That means that the second coil from the bottom here is the IF tube. Well, guess what? Let's go to our schematic here. Go back to our schematic. Now, on the schematic, the second coil from the bottom, the second 35 in a row is the IF. But in this case, it's actually the third tube down. It's not the second one here, it's the third one. So they are out of order. So what we have here is a 35, a 35, a 35, and a 27, but this one is actually your IF, your third one down, whereas on the schematic it shows it as being the second tube, okay? So that just leaves us with the third one, which is the first detector, which will be our second tube. So they're out of order here from the way they appear on the schematic. Make sure you understand there. Shows up number 2 on the schematic, but number 3, 1, 2, 3 in the chassis. That's why it's important to check this stuff out. Don't trust your schematic. Say, well, yeah, it's just right in the same order. No, it's not, okay? I'll tell you what, this is getting easier by the second. We've identified the oscillator coil here. We've identified the antenna coil here. We've identified the IF coil, which is the third one down, and I've labeled it IF. I don't know if you can see it down there very well. Anyway, I wrote IF down there in the middle of this coil. It's got some wax on it. I had to kind of write it off to the side. That just leaves this coil right here left, the first detector coil, which connects to this 35 tube right here. Done. We are done. We're done with this section of the radio. So what we're going to do next time is we're going to start doing some wiring in here. Now, where do you begin? Which one of these things do you start on to do the rewiring? Removal and rewiring, one wire at a time. Where do we begin? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll just let the words of All American 5 Radio, Rick McWhorter, I'll let him do it. Words that he spoke back in the year 2010. And by the way, he's the one that really got me started in all this radio stuff, in case you don't know. I was looking on the internet one day wondering if anybody was interested in that sort of thing, and boom, here he was, popped right up there, and I said, this is fantastic. I called the wife over and made her, look what I found. Look at this guy, All American 5 Radio. He's doing exactly the things that I want to do. And it just took off from there, and here we are today. So, Rick is the main man as far as I'm concerned, getting me started in this. There's no one else that even compared back in those days in particular. He got me going. So let's hear what he has to say about where we should start.
If you don't know where to start in the middle.
And that's it. That's exactly what we're going to do, and we're going to do it next time. So until then, this is John.